The stars drifted silently outside the thick glass of the command deck. Captain Rhea Morgan stood at the center of the Resolute, a United Human Federation warship, her arms crossed behind her back. The crew around her worked quietly. No one spoke unless necessary. This wasn't a drill. Before them, just beyond the edge of the Zarkin Nebula, floated the Virex fleet, 12 insectoid warships arranged in a wide blockade across the galactic trade route. Their hulls were long, spiked, and dark green, like beetles made of steel. They hadn't moved. They hadn't spoken. And that was the problem. "Still no transmissions, Commander?" Morgan asked. Her voice was calm, controlled. Commander Isaac Brandt, her second-in-command, checked the terminal. "None, Captain. No signals. Not even passive comms. They're not even jamming us. Just silent." Morgan nodded slightly. She didn't like silence. Silence meant control. Silence meant they didn't need to explain themselves. The Resolute had been sent here to monitor increased Virex activity. But what they found wasn't a scouting party, it was a full military blockade. And the Virex weren't known for subtle gestures. Lieutenant Harrow at the comms turned in his chair. "Standard protocol is to issue hailing frequencies. Attempt peaceful contact." "Standard protocol," Morgan echoed softly. She didn't look at him. Her eyes were fixed on the view screen, on those waiting, unmoving ships. She had seen this before on Mars, during the riots. Military units had stood their ground in silence, just like this, while peace talks dragged on behind closed doors. Her husband and daughter had died in those 3 days of delay. Silence wasn't peace. It was strategy. "Weapon systems online," said the tactical officer, Ensign Davi. Her hands trembled slightly. Morgan glanced toward her. "Steady." Davi nodded and tightened her grip on the console. Commander Brandt leaned closer. "Captain, respectfully, shouldn't we try to open a channel first? A warning shot, at least? Let them know we're not here for a fight." Morgan turned to face her crew. "Do you think they don't see us? That they don't know we're here?" The bridge went quiet. She continued. "They are blocking a legal trade route. That's an act of aggression under Accord law. They know this. They're waiting to see if we'll play the game by their rules." Brandt frowned. "But diplomacy doesn't work when the other side already made their move," Morgan cut in. Not angry, just certain. She turned back to the screen. The Virex ships still hadn't moved. Not a single light blinked on their hulls. She took a deep breath. "Target the lead vessel. Designation, Chisentel. Full spread. Lasers and torpedoes." There was a long pause. Brandt hesitated. "Captain, this will be seen as a response," she said. "They moved first. We answer." No one argued again. Davi locked onto the lead Virex ship. The system confirmed. Target locked. Morgan stared at it for one last moment. Her voice came low and clear. "Fire." The Resolute's forward batteries lit up. Twin beams of searing light shot out across the black. A heartbeat later, torpedoes followed, streaking into the void. The Virex ship didn't move. Then it exploded. Fire and metal bloomed like a dying star. Pieces spun off into nothingness. The rest of the Virex fleet began to shift, slow and deliberate, as if surprised. The silence was broken. On the bridge of the Resolute, no one cheered. No one smiled. They just waited to see what would happen next. Morgan said nothing. She just stood there, watching the screen. She had made the choice. Now the galaxy would answer. The explosion still lingered on the main screen of the Resolute, a bright, pulsing cloud where the Virex flagship had been moments ago. Shattered hull fragments floated like debris from a broken insect shell. The silence on the bridge was heavier now, not from tension, but from shock. Captain Rhea Morgan didn't speak. She watched the screen as if she were waiting for something, maybe a counterattack, maybe a transmission. But the remaining Virex ships didn't move. Not yet. "Target destroyed," Ensign Davi said, her voice barely above a whisper. Her hands were still locked on the firing controls. No survivors detected. Commander Brandt stood frozen, his eyes fixed on the red marks on his tactical screen. "They're still holding position, all 11 ships." "They didn't expect it," Morgan said simply. "We broke the pattern." Across the galaxy, news traveled fast. Within minutes, the explosion was being reported by dozens of sensors from civilian transports, mining vessels, and nearby satellites. A military AI unit on a trade platform picked up the signal and sent an alert to Earth Central. Back on Earth, the United Human Federation Command Center lit up in red. Across alien systems, warning icons flashed on walls of light. The message was always the same. Human warship opened fire on Virex fleet. No warning. No signal. One Virex ship destroyed. The Council of Galactic Accord convened within the hour. Ambassadors from over 50 species demanded answers. The Virex envoy, Zektar, stood in the circular chamber, his chitinous face still, his dark eyes calm. They did not hail us, he said. They did not speak. They fired. Without cause. Without honor. Some council members murmured agreement. Others, including the more war-hardened races, stayed silent. Humanity had always been unpredictable, but this was a shift. Back on the Resolute, the Virex fleet remained motionless. Then, slowly, one of the enemy ships pulled back, drifting away from the blockade. Another followed. And another. Within 10 minutes, the blockade dissolved like mist, the remaining ships turning into warp-jump trajectories and disappearing into hyperspace. They're retreating, Brant said, surprised. They didn't expect us to respond with fire, Morgan replied. They thought we'd talk first. They were wrong. Lieutenant Harrow at comms looked up from his screen. Incoming message from Fleet Command, Captain. High priority. Play it, Morgan said. The message came through an audio only. A cold, controlled voice from Admiral Jensen at Central Command. Captain Morgan, this is an official statement. The UHF did not authorize offensive action. We have received reports of the destruction of a Virex ship under your command. You are ordered to stand down and await escort. Do not take further action. A council inquiry is pending. The message ended. No apologies. No support. Just orders. Brant turned toward her. They're throwing you under. Morgan didn't answer right away. She walked toward the wide viewing glass, staring into space where the Virex ships had vanished. I expected as much. But you followed protocol, Davi said quietly. Virex ships blocked the trade route. That's a hostile act. Protocol is flexible, Morgan said. So are politics. There was a long pause. The bridge lights dimmed to operational blue as the Resolute settled into standby mode. Captain, Brant said after a moment, do you regret it? Morgan turned back, meeting his eyes. No. They would have struck first, just not with weapons. They would have choked us with rules, cornered us with agreements, and waited until we couldn't move. I've seen that happen before. I won't let it happen again. She sat in the command chair. Her voice firm but quiet. This ship will hold position. We'll await the next move, but we won't wait forever. All across the galaxy, the debate exploded. Some human systems praised her. Independent colonies called her a protector. Talk channels buzzed with terms like decisive, courageous, dangerous. Other sectors were furious. UHF diplomats apologized. Earth's government distanced itself from her actions. The Virex declared the shot an act of war. But the truth was simpler. The Resolute had been surrounded. The captain had made a choice. And now, no one could pretend nothing had changed. The Resolute floated in the quiet dark of space, engines at idle, weapons on standby. Around it, there was no enemy in sight, only the scattered remains of the shattered Virex ship and empty lanes once clogged by blockade. The silence had returned, but this time, it was not peace. It was the calm after a storm that had only just begun. Inside the ship, the mood was shifting. Captain Rhea Morgan sat alone in her quarters, eyes fixed on a small screen replaying footage of the strike. She watched the moment her torpedoes left the ship, the moment fire bloomed in the void. She didn't flinch. She hadn't flinched when she gave the order, and she wouldn't now. Her door chimed. Enter, she said. Commander Brant stepped in. He looked tired. Not physically, but mentally, worn from the weight of divided loyalties. They're talking about you on every channel, Rhea, he said without the usual formality. Some call you a hero. Others want your head. Morgan leaned back in her chair. That sounds about right. He crossed his arms. The Council's calling it an act of recklessness. Earth's government is under pressure from 3 species to arrest you. They say you've endangered the entire Accord. Morgan looked him in the eye. And do you agree with them? He hesitated, then shook his head. I'm not sure. I believe you did what you thought was right. I just don't know if the galaxy can survive a war based on instinct. She said nothing for a moment, then replied, Instinct is what kept us alive before the stars were mapped. And it's what will keep us alive now. Meanwhile, throughout the galaxy, the reaction to Morgan's decision was spreading like wildfire. On the Martian colonies, miners and freighter pilots called her brave. Finally, they said, a captain who doesn't ask permission to protect human interests. Some even painted her face on their cargo holds, calling her the Iron Voice. On Earth, the Federation Council tried to contain the fallout. Press conferences were held. Spokespeople used careful words like unauthorized and regrettable. Behind closed doors, High-ranking officials debated whether Morgan should be removed by force or left to become someone else's problem. The Virex were quiet, but the silence was different this time. It was cold and calculated. Envoy Zektar did not release angry threats or emotional speeches. He issued one statement, short, formal, and terrifying. We will respond in accordance with the depth of the offense. No one knew what that meant, but everyone feared it. Back aboard the Resolute, the crew's loyalty was beginning to fray. In the mess hall, officers and techs whispered over cold meals. Some supported the captain. Others worried she had doomed them all. Tensions were growing. It all came to a head when Lieutenant Kale, a young tactical officer, approached Morgan on the bridge. "Captain, may I speak freely?" he asked. She turned to him. "You may." Kale was nervous, but he held his ground. "You didn't give them a chance to speak. You just fired. That's not how we're supposed to do things. We're not savages." Morgan stood from her chair and walked toward him slowly. Not angry, calm. "You're right," she said. "That's not how we're supposed to do things. But that's how we needed to do them this time." Kale looked uncertain. "But why?" She looked at the crew around her. They were all listening now. "They didn't speak because they didn't need to," she said. "They blocked the route knowing we'd hesitate, knowing we'd try to talk. They were betting we'd blink first. I didn't. That ship we destroyed was a warning, but not to them. To everyone else watching. That humanity won't be backed into corners anymore." There was a long silence. Kale nodded slowly and stepped back. He didn't agree, not fully, but he understood. Later that evening, Morgan stood in the observation deck, watching stars blink across the void. She knew the storm she had started could not be undone. She knew her name was already being written into history books and war reports. But she didn't care about legacy. She cared about survival. The door slid open behind her. Brant stepped in, holding a data pad. "Orders just came through. They're sending a diplomatic envoy to meet the Virex. They want us to return to Earth for debrief and potential disciplinary action." Morgan didn't turn around. "Are we under arrest?" "Not officially," he said. "But they're going to strip your command." She finally looked at him. "Are you going to help them do it?" He stared back. "Not a chance." They stood in silence, watching the stars. The world had changed with one decision. Now, the galaxy would decide what to do with it. The message came at 0600 hours. It was quiet, cold, and final. "Captain Rhea Morgan, you are hereby relieved of duty pending formal inquiry by the United Human Federation Council. You are ordered to return to Earth under escort. Failure to comply will result in immediate classification as a rogue combatant." Captain Morgan stood at the center of the bridge, listening to the transmission in silence. Her face did not change. Her voice did not rise. When the message ended, she simply turned to her crew. "They've made their choice," she said. "Now I have to make mine." The bridge crew exchanged uneasy glances. No one moved. Commander Brant stepped forward first. "What are your orders, Captain?" he asked, his voice careful. She looked around the room at each face that had served under her, trusted her, followed her when others hesitated. "We're not going back," Morgan said. "Not yet. Earth wants someone to blame. The Virex want an apology. I'm not giving either of them what they want." A few gasps rippled through the crew. "Captain, if we don't comply, we'll be marked as enemies of the state," Ensign Davi warned. "We won't fire on humans," Morgan replied. "We won't attack anyone who doesn't threaten us. But we will keep moving. We'll stay ahead of the orders until this plays out." Brant gave her a firm nod. "You have my loyalty. Always." Others hesitated, but none walked away. Morgan gave her command. "Set course for the Ardent Reach. Quiet space. Off-grid systems. Few patrols." The Resolute turned away from the Zarkan corridor, away from Earth, and slipped into warp. In that moment, Captain Morgan was no longer a Federation officer. She was something else now, a fugitive to some, a symbol to others. News broke across the galaxy within the hour. "Human warship defies orders," Captain Morgan declared rogue. Media outlets spun stories nonstop. Some called her a dangerous traitor with a hero complex. Others called her the first honest soldier in a generation. Protests broke out in major cities, some demanding her arrest, others waving flags in her name. On the fringes of human space, small colonies sent coded messages to the Resolute. Simple, quiet signals. "We support you. You did the right thing. Thank you." In the shadows of the deep sectors, smugglers and old mercenary captains spoke of her with a kind of reverence. "Finally," they said, "a captain who doesn't wait to be told what survival looks like." But not everyone supported her. Some of her former academy classmates, now high-ranking officers, demanded her capture. One of them, Admiral Keston Marrow, spoke at a press conference with fire in his voice. Captain Morgan has violated military law and interstellar peace agreements. Her actions endanger every human colony. She must be brought in before more blood is spilled. The Resolute continued to move through dead sectors and forgotten routes. They powered down all active beacons, traveling dark. Every jump risked detection. Every day brought more tension to the crew. Inside the ship, the crew's morale began to shift. Some grew nervous. Inside, Davi started double-checking every system, triple-checking their energy usage. She was scared, but loyal. Lieutenant Harrow, once calm and quiet, started questioning everything, asking how long they could live like this, wondering when Earth would send ships to chase them down. It came to a head in the briefing room one night. "I didn't sign up to be a criminal," Harrow said. "We're running from our own fleet. That's not who we are." Morgan stood at the front of the room, arms crossed. "No," she said. "We're not criminals. We're soldiers who made a decision when others were too scared to act. The Council wants someone to blame. I'll be that person. But I won't hand myself over so they can pretend nothing happened." "We're not all you," Harrow replied, frustrated. "Some of us have families back home. This isn't just about one shot anymore." Morgan looked at him for a long time, then said softly, "You're right. Anyone who wants to leave will be dropped off at the next neutral station. No one will be forced to stay." Silence followed. No one left. The next day, the Resolute received a message. Encrypted. No origin ID. Just a voice. "Captain Morgan, I am Envoy Zektar. You have drawn blood. The Virex remember. And we remember in silence. You cannot hide. Not from judgment. Not from truth." Morgan listened. Then she looked to Brant. "He's hunting us," she said. Brant nodded. "And Earth's not far behind." She looked out at the stars through the viewing glass. "So be it." The Resolute was no longer a warship under command. It was a ghost in the dark, drifting between stars and allegiances. But its captain was not lost. She had purpose. She had direction. And she knew this wasn't over. Not even close. The Resolute coasted through the outer rim of the Ardent Reach, a quiet stretch of space littered with abandoned mining colonies and derelict listening posts. Here, old satellites drifted without signal, and forgotten stations floated in silence. It was a perfect place to hide. But Captain Morgan knew the silence wouldn't last. The crew had grown used to dark travel, no broadcasts, no identification codes, limited power to avoid detection. They moved like a shadow across star maps. But even shadows could be seen by the right eyes. On the fourth day in hiding, the Virex came. It started with a flicker on the long-range scanner. One ship. Then 3. Then 9. They appeared without warning, slipping in from subspace with the precision of a blade drawn in silence. Their formations were perfect. Their weapon systems were powered, but not locked. "They're not firing," said Ensign Davi, eyes wide as she stared at the tactical display. "They're just surrounding us." On the main screen, the Virex ships looked like silent beasts, all jagged armor and sharp curves, hanging in the dark with purpose. Commander Brant turned to Morgan. "They're boxing us in. They want us to stay put." Morgan nodded. "They're not here to kill us." "Not yet." A blinking light appeared on the comms panel. An incoming signal. "No encryption. Audio only," said Lieutenant Harrow. "Put it through," Morgan said. A voice filled the bridge, calm, smooth, but inhuman. It was the voice of Envoy Zektar. "Captain Morgan, you chose silence over words. Fire over peace. Now we meet, not with diplomats, but with judgment." Morgan stood still, arms behind her back. "If you're here to talk, say what you came to say. You shamed us. We offered space for warning, and you responded with destruction. You burned without asking. You broke a trust older than your species reached beyond its own moon." She answered calmly. "You were choking the trade routes. That wasn't peace. That was pressure." "It was order," Zektar replied. "A test of discipline. You failed." Morgan walked slowly toward the main screen, watching the ships outside. "You wanted submission. What you got was a reminder that humanity doesn't kneel." There was a pause on the line. When the Virex spoke again, the tone had shifted. "We are not here to fire upon you, Captain. We are here to offer resolution. Surrender yourself. Leave your ship. Come aboard the Chisenmore. Face trial in the Accord's neutral court." The bridge crew froze. No one moved. All eyes turned to Morgan. Brant stepped forward, shaking his head. "They'll bury you in a cell. Or worse." Morgan looked at the blinking comms light. "If I go, they'll call it peace. If I stay, they'll call it war." Zektar's voice came again, softer now. "You fired without a word. But you still have a voice. Use it now, before silence becomes your last memory. The transmission ended. Morgan stood quietly for a long moment. Then she turned to her crew. They're trying to trap us with honor. They know if they fire first now, they lose the moral ground. But if I step off the ship, they win without lifting a claw. So what do we do? Davi asked. We show them that silence isn't fear, Morgan said. Prepare my shuttle. Gasps spread across the bridge. You're not serious, Brant said. They'll take you, Rhea. They'll parade you in front of every Accord species like a warning. I'm not going there to surrender, she replied. I'm going to speak. Not with weapons. Not with excuses. Just truth. He stared at her. They won't let you come back. I'm not asking their permission, she said. An hour later, the shuttle launched from the Resolute. Alone. Small. Unarmed. Morgan sat inside, steady, her hands resting on her knees. Her eyes never left the growing shape of the Virex command ship ahead, massive and still, like a beast waiting for breath. As she approached the docking bay, she spoke softly to herself. No flags. No signal. Just fire. That's what they remember. Now they'll remember what comes after. Back on the Resolute, Brant stood at the command seat, watching her disappear into the Virex hold. No words were exchanged. No backup sent. Morgan had made her choice. Inside the alien ship, the walls were curved, textured like the inside of a shell. Virex soldiers watched her closely but did not touch her. No cuffs. No weapons aimed. Just eyes. They led her through long corridors until she entered a round chamber lined with glowing symbols. At the center stood Zektar. He was tall, his skin hard and ridged, like polished stone. His voice, when he spoke, was quiet. You came alone. I always do, Morgan said. You do not kneel? I never will. He tilted his head, observing her like a puzzle. Then speak, human. Why did you strike without warning? She stepped forward. Because you were waiting to see if we would beg, she said. You thought we'd talk ourselves into weakness. That's your way, not ours. We don't bow. We don't stall. We act. And now the whole galaxy remembers that. Zektar was silent. Then he said, You may go. Morgan blinked. You're letting me leave? You brought war in silence. Now you bring peace with no promise. Both are honest. We will remember that. And with that, she was escorted back to her shuttle. No trial. No death. Just a quiet release. When she returned to the Resolute, Brant met her at the ramp. What happened? She looked back once at the shrinking Virex ship. I think we just changed the rules. The Resolute hung motionless in orbit above the neutral moon of Eridan 6, a rocky, lifeless world deep in the fringe systems. Dust storms rolled across the surface below, unnoticed by anyone but the ship's long-range sensors. It was quiet again. But this time, the silence was different. Captain Rhea Morgan stood at the main viewport on the bridge. Behind her, the crew waited. No alarms. No flashing lights. No Virex ships. Just the empty space ahead. She had returned from the Virex vessel 2 days earlier. Since then, no orders had come. No attack. No message from Earth. No pursuit. Only silence. Status? She asked. Stable, Brant replied. No hostile signals. No movement on scans. Still alone. Morgan nodded. She didn't trust the calm, but she accepted it. Something had shifted since her meeting with Envoy Zektar. The Virex had let her go, not out of weakness, but recognition. She had said what needed to be said, not for them, but for everyone else listening. She turned from the viewport and faced her crew. Open a transmission, she said. Wide range. Unencrypted. Let every station, every ship, every planet hear it. Lieutenant Harrow hesitated. To everyone? Yes, Morgan said. It's time to speak. The crew worked quickly. When the signal was ready, Morgan stepped to the center of the bridge and looked into the lens. This is Captain Rhea Morgan of the UHF warship Resolute, she began, her voice calm and even. You know what we did. You've heard the stories. Some call it treason. Others call it bravery. I don't care what you call it. I care that you understand it. She paused. The crew was silent, listening. The Virex tested us. They pushed without speaking. They waited for us to ask permission to defend ourselves. I didn't ask. I acted. And yes, we fired first. Not out of hate. Not for war. But to remind the galaxy that humanity will not stand in line when its survival is questioned. She glanced briefly at Brant, then continued. We are not perfect. We have made mistakes. But we are not weak. We will not be silenced. We do not seek war. But we will not run from it. Another pause. Her voice lowered slightly. You don't have to agree with me. You don't have to follow me. But you do have to accept one truth. She looked straight into the camera. The human ship didn't broadcast. It just fired. And now, the galaxy listens. She gave a small nod. In transmission. The signal ended. For a few moments, the bridge was completely still. No one spoke. Then, slowly, the message began to spread. Within hours, it echoed across colony networks, military relays, and alien comm stations. People listened, some in fear, some in respect, some in disbelief. Morgan returned to her quarters. There was nothing left to prove. No speech left to give. She had said what needed to be said. A few hours later, a coded message arrived. It was from a fringe colony station, nothing official, just a short message from a civilian relay. We saw your broadcast. Thank you. We're not afraid anymore. Brant found her standing by the viewing window again, watching the stars. It's quiet, he said. For now, she replied. Do you think they'll come after us again? Morgan didn't answer immediately. She studied the endless black. They might, she said. But this time, they'll think twice. He smiled faintly. What now? Morgan turned toward him, her face calm. We move forward. We stay ready. And we make sure they never forget. Above them, the Resolute drifted through space, no longer hiding, no longer running. It wasn't just a warship now. It was a symbol. And far across the stars, others were watching. Some in fear, some in admiration, but all in silence. Because now, they understood what silence meant.